Hello everybody and welcome. My name is Sonia and today I'm going to talk a little bit about the yoga strap. Basically answer that question of what the heck is it for? Maybe you got one in a yoga set that you got, or maybe you see them on the prop shelf in your yoga studio, or whatnot. Anyway, they are incredibly useful for pretty much any time that we're being asked to clasp our hands behind us or reach for our feet in any particular pose or flow. And for some of us, that's just not really realistic. And maybe we can just about get there, but everything else feels really uncomfortable and crunched up. And so, using the strap will just really facilitate freeing up the body, allowing the stretches to happen, perhaps even allowing the stretches to go a little more deep, and to just really support ourselves and honor our limitations and the things that we need. And so my thought is that I would encourage you to grab a strap and sort of play around with trying a few different things that I'll talk about and demonstrate, but this won't be in any kind of logical order necessarily, just more some ideas of what to do with these things. So one more thing I will say is that if you've ended up with one that has a little metal buckle on it, just be mindful of the fact that sometimes I've seen it happen, if we're like reaching to try and hook it around somewhere, we could whack ourselves with a little metal piece, and that really doesn't feel very good. So just be aware of that and careful. I actually use old ties, literally. They're fun to find at thrift stores and whatnot, different colors, and but anyway, anything works. So we will start with a few different ways that one might use it in some seated poses. So the first one that I'll talk about is that we're going to just literally hold the strap over our heads and play around with finding the feeling of creating tautness in the strap. Not yanking on it with all your might, but also not having it be floppy. Finding that middle ground where there's tautness, you can feel that activating that tautness kind of powers up your arms, and in this case, your shoulders, especially if we remind ourselves to slide them down onto the back, right where they belong, and find our nice long spine. And so the first pose that we'll go ahead and do is to come into some side bends, and I just kind of want to invite you to go slowly enough that you can maintain that tautness in the strap and play around with the bottom hand being the strong hand. So it sort of draws itself down towards the floor and really amps up the stretch down that top arm and side body. Just like always, listen to your body, only go as far as feels right for you. And then look for that nice control as you make your way to the other side. So now the other hand becomes the dominant hand. And maybe play around with that a couple more times, just one more time each side. And that's probably good. So the next one I'm going to talk about is just a way that we could twist with a strap. And so, there's a bunch of different seated twisting poses, but just for an example, sometimes we'll cross one leg over and, grab a hold of this leg and then wring ourselves out into a twist. And, sometimes that can feel pretty like confining or just hard to get into all those positions. And so a way to receive the same stretch, you can put your legs in any way that feels good. Our focus is twisting the spine. And we're going to do it with the arms outstretched. Again, you're looking for that tautness. Now this time your arms are like train tracks, parallel to each other. And I'm just going to play around with taking those arms and just playing with how far around they can go without bending them. And then you could allow the arm behind you to bend. And you'll notice how this takes your torso and your spine into a twist. You'll straighten the legs as you come, or the arms, as you come back through center, and then go around the other way. So just a way of receiving all those twists without maybe feeling like we have to grab our body and maybe it's awkward. Okay, so next, the one that I was talking about in the beginning, where we're often asked whether we're sitting or in standing poses, to interlace our hands behind our body. Now, obviously, if you can comfortably do that, you don't need a strap. But if you want to play around with it, you would, instead of interlacing your fingers, you would hold the strap. And you can decide, does it feel good to have them quite wide? Does that really allow your shoulders to feel more free? So just kind of play around with where you're at. You do want to feel your shoulders moving towards each other, creating a nice opportunity for shoulder release. Lengthen those arms down towards the floor, and then maybe, and maybe not, but playing around with, could you take those hands higher and higher, really wringing out those shoulders. And when you get to your stretch, perhaps play around with allowing your back to start rounding as you take those arms maybe even higher. And then slowly dropping those hands down as you re-lengthen that spine. So that's a nice one. Another pretty common one, another nice shoulder one, is where you're asked to take one arm up and down towards your shoulder blades, and then reach your other hand and walk the fingertips towards each other. And sometimes that doesn't feel realistic. So again, you would take your arm up, drop your strap behind you, and then reach for the strap and walk those hands towards each other until you feel like they can't go any closer, and then look for that tautness again. And allow upper arms and shoulders to feel that stretch. So anything that's on one side, you of course would want to do on the other. So taking the other arm up, dropping the strap, and reaching back, walking those hands towards each other, finding that tautness. And of course breathing, and then coming out nice and slow. Okay, another one, we're going to move into legs. So another fairly common pose would be a seated forward fold, where perhaps you're asked to reach forward and perhaps even grab your feet, and maybe that feels miles away today for one reason or another. So again, the friendly strap is here to help. You'll wrap it around the soles of your feet, and then walk your hands down that strap to wherever it feels like it hasn't encumbered your back. You're still able to sit up nice and tall. Your arms are perhaps engaged. And now that you've got this nice leverage without feeling like, oh gosh, I must reach my feet, now you can start drawing yourself into your fold, using the strap to help you. So gently pulling on that strap, allowing it to draw your heart forward and hinge your torso towards your thighs. And slowly you allow that shape to start rounding and releasing towards your thighs. Maybe practice that a couple of times, just kind of coming in and out and reaping the benefits. And that's good. Very similar things could happen with one leg. Sometimes you might have the second leg doing something completely different. Maybe it's bent over to the side. Maybe you're even in a wide-legged place. Lots of different things happen in different yoga flows and practices. And I'm really just kind of giving some suggestions on where the strap might be handy. So, even though we're just being a little bit playful today, do try and give things a little try and try and make both sides of your body get the same stretches so that things feel a bit more balanced. So with the same idea in mind as far as reaching for the foot and that sort of thing, it can help us where we start more so having the leg off the ground. And so same deal, you would hook the strap around the sole and play with lengthening that leg and just holding onto your strap, not only allowing you to not feel like you have to reach the foot, but also giving you a little something to hold on to that supports the pose. And then kind of make sure you feel nice and stable, and you can play around with moving that leg in all the different directions that it goes, even across the body, and maybe a little bit up, maybe a little bit down, and just kind of play with it. It should feel pretty awesome. And since we did this side, let's go ahead and do the other side. Just keep things nice and even. And again, just kind of play with the 4 different directions, or the 4 main ones. And play with, maybe it would feel better if your hands were further up. Just kind of check it out so that when you are in a flow class, you've sort of already played around with knowing if and when the strap would be useful to you in certain postures. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get off the ground and come into a few standing postures where the strap might be used. So one would be a forward fold, where again, sometimes you might find someone guiding you to interlace your hands behind your back and then fold forward. And if you can do that without feeling bunched up in any way, great. Otherwise, it's a great time for the strap, similar to when we were sitting. You want to activate those shoulders, squeeze them together, lengthen those arms towards the floor, and then fold forward into your forward fold, and then perhaps play with taking those hands, in this case, towards the floor. If it still feels bunched up, then perhaps play with even more distance between your hands. Just kind of determine how this can be a useful tool for you in your body. So the same thing would apply. You might see a very similar thing in a wide-legged forward fold. Just kind of playing with that. Same thing. Decide how far apart your hands would appreciate being. And keep that tautness in the strap. Okay, so those are fairly common and a really nice time to use these straps. So another area would be in some of the balancing postures that you might see or practice. So one would be where perhaps, that you're holding your leg and you're holding it out. And maybe it's completely not realistic to grab your toe, or maybe it just makes you feel unsteady. And so again, a nice opportunity to use the strap, hooking it around your foot. You're already being challenged by balance here. So if that's the case and you want double support, hold on to something as well. A wall, a chair, some other piece of furniture, and then just allow the pose to build itself, removing all the struggle and strain. And, perhaps play with taking your hand down far enough that your arm is also long and stretching. And just like we did on the ground, you could play in this pose, if you feel steady enough, with, moving the leg and even switching hands and crossing the body. And so, you could even play with just picking it up, that nice bent leg. So since we did that on one side, let's do it on the other. So again, definitely support yourself in any way that you need, holding on. Nice long leg, nice long spine, nice long arm. In this case, it's almost like the strap is an extension of your arm. So it allows you to be nice and spacious without feeling like, oh gosh, I'm hunching over because I gotta reach my foot, right? Again, play with a little movement in there. And then as you roll through center, play with that bending of the leg, picking that foot up as high as you can, and then bringing it back to the floor. So I think I've just got one more in mind that I want to talk about. So it's another one with the leg, another balance pose. The dancer is ultimately what we're making our way into. And so again, it's, you're instructed to grab your foot and, open up into that dancer pose. So maybe it's awkward to try and grab your foot. So again, using the strap, creating a little loop so that you can put the top of your foot this time as opposed to the sole. And just find, maybe again, play with walking your hand down that strap and holding on if you need to. And now using the strap to take your foot up into the air. Creating the back bend, the shoulder stretch. Maybe if you don't feel like you need to hold on, you'll add that reaching arm and make your way back out. So again, let's balance things out. Let's do the other side. And a little bit more practicing. And open up and breathe. And wobble perhaps, and then laugh at yourself. Okay, so I do believe those are the uses of the strap that come to mind today. Hopefully that was useful. And yeah, hopefully you'll be able to get a little deeper into some of those poses that have perhaps felt inaccessible. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Namaste.